us right there, and I'm talking about Ajitha Narayanan, who is with us. Ajitha is the former Director of Information Technology at Broader. She is an IT strategy and transformation leader with significant experience helping organizations improve the maturity of information security services and software engineering practices. Ajitha is going to lead us today on the insights on how to improve enterprise security posture that enables smooth operations, especially with the shifting paradigm of the digital workforce and remote work. So Ajitha, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise and wisdom with our global audience today.
Thank you, Jose, for that great introduction, and thanks to the organizers for this wonderful opportunity to exchange ideas and experiences. Hi, everyone. My name is Ajitha Narayanan, and I am an IT leader with experience across the spectrum of IT services. In my last role as director of security for a consumer electronics organization, I helped establish a formal security program for the organization and helped improve the security posture. Today, I'd like to share with you my experiences about how organizations can improve their security posture in a cost-effective manner in such a way that it reduces organizational exposure, minimizes incidents, enables continuity of operations, it is adaptable, and it is cost-effective. First and foremost, it is important to set up a structured process to drive improvements. And the key attributes of such a process are, it needs to be iterative. We can't boil the ocean. And we have to be careful not to sacrifice progress in the name of perfection. The idea is to keep making improvements, continuous improvements, till we get to perfection. So first and foremost, the process, it's great to have an iterative process. It needs to be repeatable and consistent. It needs to be measurable. We need to measure where we are on the journey, where we make a start. We need to understand where we want to go, and we need to take measurements along the way to guide us. The process needs to be collaborative. Security is not just the responsibility of the security team. We need to take the whole organization along with us on the journey. That means the business, the end users, and we also need to build strong collaborations and partnerships with managed service providers who can act as an extension of our own security team and add to our SOC capabilities. The process needs to be pragmatic. We need to use dollops of common sense while going about implementing such a program. The security controls are vast, and we need to prioritize what we address first. There's only so much budget and so many resources. We need to use our resources wisely to tackle the most important problems first. So it's very important to tie the security program tightly with enterprise risk management, to have a good understanding of the risk appetite of the organization, to understand what it means to the organization, to the impact to the organization when a certain control is not in place, and use that information to guide and prioritize the work. So very important to try. Prioritization is absolutely key. The process needs to be adaptable. There are a lot of factors that play into the security program, internal factors as well as external factors. Internal factors could be the changing business landscape. External factors could be evolving threat landscape. So we need to make sure that our process is responsive to these changes, and that we are able to adapt and fine-tune and make modifications and course corrections as we go along. The process needs to be evolutionary. There needs to be continuous improvement. We need to learn from what we are doing, both the strengths as well as the weaknesses, and plug it back in and improve as we go along. The process needs to be governed. We need support from the highest levels of management for our security initiatives. So there needs to be good reporting and good buy-in and good governance overall. The process also needs to be auditable. We should welcome outside perspectives, and it's also great to use formal audits of the process from time to time. So these are the key attributes of a good, strong process that can help drive the improvements in our security posture. So if you look at the key considerations, it is exposure assessment to really understand what the impact of to the organization is. What is the likelihood of a control of a risk becoming a reality, and what is the impact to the organization? What are the threats that are relevant to the business? So we need to fine tune it to our own business and understand what are the threats, what threats are more relevant to our business. We need to understand tolerance for downtime. In a bank, there might be zero tolerance to downtime. So we've got to have a good understanding of what is our tolerance to downtime and what is our risk appetite. We've got to look at CapEx, tools and technology, and also operational expenses focused on execution, such as headcount, third-party consulting, breach retainers, and that sort of thing. We also have to look at the people aspect. We should include strong training for security awareness to educate our staff about security and generate security awareness. So if you look at it, a good program will focus on people, process, and technology. So if you look at Verizon's data breach report in 2021, the top breaches are laid out. Social engineering is one of the key reasons for breaches, and that has to do with people. So good training, good security training for staff is extremely key in preventing breaches, because it's one of the #1 reasons for security breaches as of the 2021 report from Verizon. Web application attacks are the #2 reason, according to this report. So if an organization has an e-commerce solution, for example, then they need to focus on ways to prevent web application attacks, such as a strong web application firewall. Other system intrusions, such as complex attacks through leveraging malware, could be another reason for breaches. So having automated defenses that can detect and block this malware is extremely important, and so on. So understanding what is going on out in the world and fine-tuning our approach and our priorities becomes extremely important. So in terms of the process for driving the improvements, it is very important to understand where we are on our journey, where we start, where we want to go, and measure along the way. So it's good to take a benchmark and a baseline of our current environment against any standard security, any security standards such as NIST or CIS top 20 controls. Again, good to take a top-down approach while doing this baseline. And this ties back to what I said earlier about using an iterative approach. This is a vast field, and there are many subcontrols. In each control has many subcontrols. So in order to not to overwhelm ourselves, we take a top-down approach, get into increasing levels of granularity as we tighten up our environment and as we make things better. So use a continuous and evolutionary approach and get into increasing levels of granularity and keep prioritizing and fixing and achieving conformance. So perform a gap analysis, take an honest look at the environment to see, what are the areas where the organization might be meeting the controls and what areas need work. then step back and look at what it means to the organization if something were to go wrong in that area, basically exposure analysis. And then prioritize, prioritize, and prioritize. Prioritization is key. Come up with a vision for how you see this baseline evolving over time. You might be non-conformant in a given area, but if you do the work and you have a plan of when to get, to get that control into compliance or conformance through prioritization, and then make sure to re-baseline periodically. Another important aspect to take into consideration is that we're going to use a lot of solutions and tools to automate our defenses or to automate our monitoring. Automation is key. And therefore, we need to have a good technology selection process, a technology induction and change management process to ensure that we are picking the right solutions that meet the needs of our environment. So a good technology selection process is key to making good decisions about what solutions could really work in our environment and do the job. Make a solid plan to close the gap and then track those actions to closure. So this is how the improvement process plays out. So if you look at the CI's top 20 controls, Center for Internet Security has come up with a way that organizations can secure themselves. And the good thing about it is it's laid out in a way that it's already prioritized in a way that there are the basic controls, foundational, organizational, etc. So the first 6 controls are considered the basic controls: inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices, inventory of authorized and unauthorized software, secure configurations, continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation, controlled use of administrative privileges, maintenance, monitoring, and analysis of audit logs. So these controls ensure that the right users have access to the right pieces of information and that the servers and the software and all of that is being patched and there are no vulnerabilities. Now, each of these controls has many, many subcontrols. So there are about 177 subcontrols in the CI's top 20 controls. So again, use the iterative approach, take a top-down view of these controls and go into increasing levels of granularity. We don't rest on our laurels. We keep going all the way through to truly understand where we stand with respect to all of these controls and tighten them up as we go along and using a method of prioritization and impact to the organization. So if you look at the cybersecurity capability maturity model, there are maturity indicator levels associated with these controls, going from a lower level to a higher level. So maturity level 0 against a practice means it's not performed. Maturity level 1 means that it is done on an ad hoc basis. It's not mature. It may or may not be done. It's ad hoc. Maturity level 2 indicates that the practice is more or less institutionalized. It is documented. The stakeholders are aware and involved. Adequate resources are provided to support the process. So the process is basically understood and carried out. And it's obviously more mature than level 0 and level 1. Maturity level 3 includes governance. So it's more evolved than maturity level 2. Not only is the practice carried out, but there is visibility around it. There is governance around it. There are policies around it. So it's more mature. Now you could go even higher up the maturity path to include measured, quantitatively understood, a practice that is quantitatively understood, and improvements brought about by understanding, analyzing the numbers and feeding it back into a closed loop feedback system of continuous improvement. So the idea is to mature every control and every practice up this maturity path to the highest levels of maturity. So to guide the process, as I was just mentioning, it's very important to have measurements. So every control, you take the time to identify what measures make sense. And again, the measures could be different for different audiences. So people who are doing the actual work, who are close to the work, who are in the trenches, will obviously need more detailed measurements. And as we go higher up the management chain, we need to abstract the measurements to make it meaningful. So it take the time to understand, what the measures are, what measures make sense for different roles, and make sure that we are regularly taking those measurements and learning something from it. Establish key performance indicators for these controls or for the program. Key performance indicators tell us how well a given control is performing or how well our security program is performing. For example, the number of SEV1, SEV2, SEV3 incidents and the trends could be a key performance indicator. No SEV1, SEV2, or SEV3 incident at all shows that our security program is possibly working very well. So key performance indicators tell us how well our program is performing. Then we have the key risk indicators. Key risk indicators are like the smoke alarm, smoke detector. They are leading indicators that there could be a problem that might manifest itself if we are not careful. So, for example, if the organization has an exception process to accept a risk in a given area, and that's part of the process, say, and if you suddenly find that a lot of these risks are being accepted, are being routed through the exception process and are being accepted, that could be a key risk indicator that, if we do that a lot, something could go wrong. So key risk indicators give us a leading, give us notification ahead of time that something could go wrong and we can do something about it. Again, establish methods to gather the data, automate as much as possible, analyze the data regularly. So it's not only important to gather the data, but I think the focus should be on analysis, gaining actionable insights and doing something with those insights to improve the process and improve the program and the security posture of the organization. And establish good management reporting all the way up so that everyone is informed and there's right, support for the process and for the security initiatives, and there's buy-in for the initiatives. So, as I mentioned, automation is key. Automate as much as possible. The monitoring, for example, log monitoring should be automated. Alerting if anything goes wrong, if there are events that should create an alert, that should be automated. Reporting and dashboards should be automated. Automate the defenses so that it's not manual. Find solutions, go out and find solutions to automate as many of the defenses as possible. And training of the staff, although classrooms training is good, I think it's great to provide online training, a short burst of training given to the folks, reinforced and through a learning management system and tracking, for example, and also things like sending out phishing tests. And if people take the bait, then we need to reach out and train those people even more to make sure that they don't click on a phishing email, for example, right? So getting the measures, understanding how the organization is maturing in their security awareness by monitoring and measuring the training is also extremely key. So automation overall is very key. In the end, we bring it all together. We use a structured approach to produce measurable and consistent results. We integrate the security program tightly with risk management and temper it with risk appetite because prioritization is key. We institute a strong process for technology induction and change management to make sure we are picking the right solutions that work well in our environment. We institute solutions for vulnerability and risk prioritization, for monitoring, for alerting, and automating defenses. We leverage efficient and reliable managed service providers to expand our SOC capability. And we build a strong human firewall by training our staff. We acknowledge the gaps and work to close them, but also celebrate the wins and enjoy the journey. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Ajitha. A great summary and review of the journey of bringing security to our environments, whether it's we are working in offices or remotely, as so many of you have been in the past 18 months or so. Number of questions from the audience I want to bring to you, and the first one has to do with striking this balance between the need for accessibility, the need for openness, the need for collaboration, and security. What does it look like in the organizations? And you have worked with so many great leading organizations that struggle with this question. How do we make things accessible and open and transparent and secure? I mean, the first three words don't go very well with secure. What do you see out there in the marketplace today that for the organizations that strike the best balance or blend of these needs? What do they do that's different from most of other organizations?
So information should only be shared on a need-to-know basis. So when I mentioned collaboration, it's to collaborate with the right level of people and share information at the right level of abstraction and on a need-to-know basis only. That's very key. We need to take the entire organization along for the journey, security journey, because security is not just the responsibility of the security team. What that means is that folks should know in general what security means and how breaches can happen. What are the types of breaches that one could fall prey to? What is an individual's role and responsibility in preventing that breach, such as social engineering attacks. So educating them and taking them along for the journey is very, very important. But information itself should be shared on a need-to-know basis only. That's why privileged access and other such things are very important. You provide information to the right people at the right time and on a need-to-know basis for as and when they need to know it. In terms of external collaborations, I think managed service providers who are in the security space, who are experts at what they do, we could build strong partnerships with them, and they're security professionals and they work with us in providing services. That is another aspect of collaboration that I mentioned. Did I answer your question, Jose?
Absolutely. That's such a comprehensive, honest type of question that I gather here from the comments that were being made. Yes, you definitely have addressed it. I'm gonna skip to a different question here that William Fuller has asked. First of all, he makes a comment that great list of process attributes and framework that you shared, which is very helpful. He was curious about if you can provide a little bit more information regarding the selection and the measurement of what you term the key risk indicators. How do you go about, if you can talk a little bit more about how do you go about selecting and measuring these key risk indicators?
So I would go with the approach of goal, question, metric paradigm. I would say, what are we looking to do? what is it that we are trying to prevent in a given area, right? So you could do it at a control level, or you could do it at an organizational level, and pick what is right and what is meaningful. As I said, for example, this one is a very good example. We have an exception process. When we work with, say, third-party vendors, we go through a strong security review of those third-party vendors, SOC 1, SOC 2 type reviews. And then if at the end of that review, if we find out that the vendor didn't pass muster, right? But there's a strong business reason to go with that vendor regardless. So the security team says, well, we did the review and the vendor didn't qualify from a security standpoint, but a business decision is made regardless to go ahead. Because at the end of the day, security is not an end in itself, it's a means to an end to support the business, of course. So if a business decision is made to go forward regardless, now that could be an accepted and managed risk. But if that keeps happening over and over, then we have a bigger problem on hand. So it's important to track how many exceptions are happening, what are the reasons for it, to step back and look at it. So that's one aspect of a key risk indicator. So it's like the smoke alarm. So you could look at it, you could look at other such areas too, and see, say, for example, if you do vulnerability scanning of your software and you find that certain kinds of vulnerabilities are rampant, that's a key risk indicator that there's something that's not right about the development process, and we need to institute more, stronger secure engineering tools, more training for the development folks to produce, secure code, OWASP compliant code, and things like that. So key risk indicators are leading indicators of problems, and depending upon what is the problem you're trying to solve, you can come up with, how you would figure out ahead of time whether that is going to become a problem.
Very well, Ajitha. The next question here comes from Rakesh Kabra, and he has a very good question, which I think is that you have established a very disciplined framework for enterprise security, and which is sound, but it does require governance, it requires resources, it requires, it assumes a certain size of organization. And his question is, can this work for a small company environment? And if you're gonna do it in a small company environment, what are some of the adaptations that you may need to make?
Very good question. So the good news is this process can work for a company of any size, right? I said right at the start that prioritization is key, and iterative process is key. Fine-tuning the approach to what is needed by the business is key. There will be certain aspects that all organizations can do. Automating certain defenses, for example, is something that a small organization can and should do, because you don't have a lot of resources anyway. So you need to focus on good solutions that can automate a lot of this work. And you can tailor your governance to what is needed for the organization. So this is not prescriptive to say that the scope of this needs to be yay, or it needs to have so much, so many resources or so much staff. You tailor your approach to what is needed, and within the constraints of what your environment is. So the good news is, regardless of the size of the organization, I think everybody can secure themselves using commonsensical practices that are rooted in good process.
And following up on that, Ajitha, one of the questions that Tilato is bringing up is, if you have is there a workplace security management platform that you recommend, that you have found to be useful? And we know that we're not endorsing a specific vendor here or there, but it's okay to talk about things that work well. Is there a workplace security management platform out there that you find to be kind of leading the market in terms of oh, the ease of use and of course the capabilities of the platform, and something that's really useful?
So I have not used a unified workplace management, security workplace management platform, although that's an interesting concept. Something like this to be made into a platform that could help organizations implement their security programs is actually a very cool concept. I haven't used that, but what I have used is, what I have done and what I have used is good solutions in the market for different things. So, for example, when you look at the top 8 or 9 breaches that Verizon spoke about for 2021, things like there are great training. Software for training, administering training to the staff. There are great solutions out there for web application firewalls that are needed to prevent web application breaches. There are great endpoint EDR solutions out there, great solutions for vulnerability management, vulnerability scanning and analysis. So for each of those controls, I think there are a lot of industry solutions out there, and one has to accept that one size might not fit all. So it's always good to do a proof of concept in your own environment, and you also have to look at what are the other mitigating controls that you might already have in place. So a solution might be extremely critical for one organization, might not be as critical for another organization because they have something else already in place. So you need to fine tune it to what is your environment. So gap analysis is extremely important to decide the overall approach. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a better answer than that.
No, that's good. I think you have just identified that there's an opportunity in the marketplace there for a workplace platform for security, which is fantastic. We have lots of great leaders and entrepreneurs in these sessions, and I'm sure someone out there is looking at this as an opportunity. And there are some, but a unified, standardized platform is maybe it's not as prevalent and developed at this point for security. Following up on this technology lead here, Anil Popala asked the question about what you have seen in terms of intelligent automation for enterprise security. What are the technologies, if any, that you have seen, especially in the last couple of years, that have really delivered value for enterprise security? And he's thinking in terms of AI and blockchain and other related exponential technologies that may be being applied to enterprise security now in a very useful way. Anything that stands out to you that you find that's not hype, but really useful applications of these exponential technologies?
Yes. So I was very excited to discover solutions for web application firewall, a one-stop solution for a WAF, a web application firewall, bot management, and CDN, all a one-stop shop. Because when we are looking at improving our e-commerce performance, if we go with individual vendors for bot management or web application firewall or CDN, it could introduce latencies because it's all a hop. Every one of those is a hop. So it can introduce latencies. Also, it can increase cost. So we really analyze a lot of solutions side by side for our environment, for our budget, for what we wanted to do, and we were excited to find a solution that did all of it and helped us. So I think it's important to understand what we are looking to do, and then that's why I mentioned a strong technology selection, induction, and change management process. Go about it in a structured manner. Use measurements. Just use measurements. Measurements guide you and tell you, what is strong about one solution versus another. And then based on your needs and your specific environment, you can pick what you need. So I have found some very exciting solutions out there that did great things. It's exciting and it's interesting, and there's always something new coming. So that's why you cannot rest on your laurels. You have to keep looking, and you have to do periodic assessments. It's cyclical. That's why it's cyclical. It's iterative, it's cyclical. You got to look at what is out there, and you got to take stock every once in a while.
Very, very good. So William Fuller has a number of questions related to the concept of the SOC that you discussed before, the SOC. And he asked if you could repeat the components of the SOC and then talk a little bit about who and which departments own the SOC and who has access to it. How do you decide on access? So if you can expand a little bit more about the governance around the SOC.
So the Security Operations Center, now not every organization can afford a huge security team and build a whole SOC, right? So, it needs to be, that's why it's important to go the managed service route and find reliable partners, managed service providers who can act as extensions of your own security team. For example, SIEM solutions, a security incident and event management solution, could be. There are great managed service providers out there who have entire SOC capabilities. So what happens is that you pipe the logs from your servers, your network, from all of it to the SOC service. And they are looking at it, they are munging the data, they're looking at it, they're analyzing it, and they tell you, they send automatic alerts if they see something out of whack happening in your environment. So that's basically automated log monitoring and analysis, right? So the log analysis of the logs tell you, it looks for patterns, it looks for things that might be happening. It might not be something that a single event might not tell you that there's something wrong, but there could be a pattern of events that could tell you that there's something going on. And also, these SOC services, they're looking at data not just from your organization, but from other organizations. So they're actually correlating it with what is happening in the world at that point, right? And keeping you informed and acting as an extension of your security, services. So a SOC team really, there are different ways of managing a SOC team, and every organization has to decide what is right for them. You can get creative about how you do it. It all depends upon how much budget you have, what are your resources, and then you fine tune it. But if you don't have a lot of resources or budget, I would say don't be disheartened. There are ways to get around it. You can get creative, and there are ways to get around it. There are professional services out there whose job it is to do this. So you just need to make sure that you find the right solution that fits your needs and integrate and partner with them.
Very, very good. And Ajitha, I have one final question here from the audience, and this has to do with either the last 12 months or maybe the next 12 months. If you look at from where we are today, plus or minus 12 months, what do you see as the biggest change and in enterprise security that has taken place in the marketplace, and that's requiring organizations to pay attention to, and they need to be aware of that? What would that be?
So I think everyone is working remote now. There's a lot of remote work going on, right? And in order to make sure that folks can work remote without interruption of services, there are a bunch of things that we need to keep our eyes skinned for. I think monitoring is a key aspect of it. So if you look at it, a couple different things, right? So one is obviously things like multi-factor authentication, education of the staff in security awareness training, because phishing emails, if clicking on a phishing email can really cause a lot of churn. So it's avoidable if we can coach and train our people. Of course, we can also put solutions in place to prevent those kinds of things. But that doesn't replace the need for training and education. So I think educating the end users, looking at solutions for multi-factor authentication to prevent breaches, and also because everything is online now, so I think strong web application firewalls. These are the things that I think assume more importance in today's world.
Very, very well. Think before you click, for sure. And listen, Ajitha, thank you so much for taking your time to sharing your expertise across multiple organizations with respect to enterprise security in this new world that we live in today of remote work. Very helpful insights, and we very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for us.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I wish everyone all the very best.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Ajitha Narayanan, former Director of Information Technology at Brother, and sharing her expertise with security in times of remote work, in times of a dispersed and digital workplace. So I would like to set up our next session now, and on that next session, we're going to be bringing a top expert on environment, on workplaces, on technology, on improvements and innovations. And I'm talking about Michael Muhlenberg, who is Director of Operational Technology and Strategic Planning for 3M. Michael will be with us, and he's going to talk about creating a frictionless employee experience to foster positive culture change, drive innovations, connected experiences, and better user adoption. So Michael is a organizational culture and operational leader, and is going to be sharing with us that journey at 3M that he has been leading successfully for many, many years. So join me back at the top of the hour with Michael Muhlenberg. Thank you.